la tierra de México, donde el cielo es azul, un hombre se alzó con valentía.
I am Enrique Gorostieta Velarde. These are the moments when childhood and its forgotten fragrances are remembered. These are the moments of awakening, fighting a lost war, when the sin of death is present in every breeze that blows. However, what is clear to me is that battles fought for Christ are never lost, and that the dead become martyrs, like new seeds for new and better Christians. Nonetheless, we must work on the faith of the people, for it alone can gather the flock. In wars that lead to demonic acts, we will always lose because of our greatest values, charity and compassion. Now, I see the furious autumn of the tree that roots my life, increasing the pruning of its hours. Thus, as if it were a movie, I see that I was born in Monterrey, Nuevo Leon, on September 18, 1890, in a family of Basque descent. I grew up and studied, following the example of my father, Enrique Gorostieta Gonzalez, who was a politician, writer, and lawyer. I grew up surrounded by stacks of books, listening to my father's endless debates with his colleagues, and inventing military stories of times long past. For this reason, it was no surprise when, in 1906, I enrolled in the military academy. In 1914, I was part of the defense of Veracruz during the occupation by American troops, holding the rank of colonel under the command of General Guillermo Rubio Navarrete. I was part of the Federal Army until August 1914, months after President Huerta resigned from office. This is how I was able to put my theoretical knowledge into practice and be recognized by my peers as an officer of firm determination in the face of adversity. Now, I think that faith was fundamental in the spiritual support of our troops, who would pray in their trenches whenever they could. This is how I came to know the true power of Christianity, which is evidenced only when one's body is exposed to death. As proof of my commitment in Veracruz, I was promoted to Brigadier General on May 17, 1914, becoming one of the youngest generals in the Army. I was out of Mexico until 1921, reorganizing my father's holdings, who had died in exile in Laredo, Texas, due to his active participation in Huerta's government. In February 1922, with more calm in my life, I decided to establish marital ties with my beloved Gertrudis Losaga Sepulveda. As a result of our love, our firstborn was born in Mexico City, who kept the tradition of bearing his grandfather's name. Our happiness was complete until May of the following year when our son died of an unknown illness. Joy only returned to our home in 1925 when we were living in Torreon, Coahuila, after the birth of our second son, whom we named the same as his brother, who would watch over him from heaven. In 1926, our third child, Fernando, arrived, completing the joy and responsibilities that come with children in a simple house that becomes a home. In the year 1927, more precisely in the month of July, I received in my office a representative of the National League for the Defense of Religious Liberty. They expressed their need for my support as a general, to discipline the people who had taken up arms in defense of religion. One of the big problems was the excess of leaders who orchestrated their attacks without central direction. The fundamental reason that led me to accept this offer was that my family is Christian, and I would have soldiers convinced of the righteousness of their cause. Thus, simple peasants would transform into heavenly warriors. It was very clear that Plutarco Calles' government had caused enormous chaos. Atrocious murders were committed against clergy and civilians to establish a dictatorship that did not leave any patriotic and Christian military indifferent. With his infamous Calles law, we saw restrictions such as that all ministers of religion must be Mexicans by birth. The penalty for violators will be a fine of $500 or 15 days in jail. That anyone who performs acts of worship, that is, administers the sacraments or preaches doctrinal sermons, may be punished with the aforementioned penalty. That no one can teach religion in any elementary school, even if it is private, under penalty of a $500 fine or 15 days in jail. That it is strictly forbidden to take religious vows, Monasteries and convents must be dissolved and suppressed. If the dispersed members of these monasteries reunite secretly, they will be fined and subject to a penalty of 1 or 2 years in prison and 6 years for their superior. That a penalty of 5 years for the minister of any religion who criticizes any article of the Constitution, whether in public or in private. That it is strictly forbidden for ministers of both sexes of any religion to wear clothing or habits that distinguish them as members of any religion or cult. The fine for this will be $500 or 15 days in jail. That all temples are the property of the nation, and the federal power will decide which ones may remain designated for worship. All episcopal residences, parish houses, seminaries, asylums, and schools belonging to religious associations will become the property of the nation, and the federal government will determine what uses they will be put to. So great was the hatred of President Plutarco Elias Calles that on July 31, 1926, he suspended worship in all temples and churches in the country. As soon as this prohibition was established, combat broke out between spontaneous popular guerrillas and the government army. Most of the so-called Cristeros were rural inhabitants, animal breeders, and artisans. They were given this nickname because, alongside their armed actions, they shouted at the top of their lungs, "Viva Cristo Rey!" With all these events unfolding, I did not have to think long before responding to the League, and I accepted to be their general. I met with the leaders who were gradually coming under my command, and I offered my vows. In general, the leaders agreed to continue acting under my orders. However, some looked at me with distrust. Immediately, without allowing more time for diplomacy, we ordered detachments and prepared to fight the Calles army, scapular on our necks and revolver in hand, in the states of Jalisco, Michoacán, Colima, and Zacatecas. The cruelty of this war surpassed in savagery everything that the devil himself could have wished for. I say this especially because of the murders of children under 15 committed by the infamous Calles army. This strikes me deeply as the father of 2 children and Luz Maria, whom I only know from photos. Undoubtedly, the most shocking murder was the torture and execution of Joselito. I met this young boy at a refuge camp of our army, where he arrived with another boy of his age. I learned that they had met with the officers and requested to enlist, showing great confidence for their young age. They were accepted and given domestic tasks such as cleaning the stables and organizing supplies for the expedition squads. Many afternoons, after finishing his tasks, Joselito would sit by my side and vividly tell me about his dreams. He never stopped talking about how happy he was to serve in the Cristero army, saying, "My parents would be proud of me and my brother." Now that I think about it, I should have taken more action and forbidden him to fight. The impulsiveness of youth knows no fear or responsibility, only desires. Once Mass was over, Joselito knelt at an improvised altar, his face full of tears, raising the crucifix to the level of his eyes. I remember him shouting, "Christ the King, do not let me fail in my services as a Cristero. Never doubt my faith in your word, Lord, and accompany my flesh in battle, for without you there is no victory." I can't get out of my mind the afternoon of February 10th, 1928, when, after a minor skirmish, 2 of our soldiers arrived wounded at the camp with the news that the squad had been captured by federal troops. Along with them, Joselito had been tortured and killed. Unable to extract any confession of treason from him about his troops or betrayal of the faith, they cut the soles of his feet and forced him to walk barefoot. At every step he took, Joselito shouted, "Viva Cristo Rey! Viva la Virgen de Guadalupe!" After being taken to the cemetery in Sahuayo, Michoacán, he was repeatedly stabbed, to which he responded, "Viva Cristo Rey!" and one of the soldiers shot him in the head. After the signing of the peace agreement between the Catholic Church and the government, the Cristero forces disbanded. My family and I moved to the city of Guadalajara. Today, at the age of 38, my life seems to be going well, and I only want to fulfill my Christian duty as a father and husband. For this reason, I have been invited by the representatives of the National League for the Defense of Religious Liberty to a meeting in the state of Michoacán. As soon as we are all gathered, we will talk about the national situation and discuss new dialogue strategies with the government. I intend to reduce any altercations and reach a peaceful understanding. Moreover, knowing that it will be a long meeting, I will invite my wife Gertrudis and our children to spend a few days together in the countryside, walking along the paths and breathing fresh air. From the meeting in Morelia, I hope that our desires will be fulfilled and that God will help us overcome the obstacles that still lie ahead. It is also necessary to change our attitude towards the poor and unemployed, to whom we must give.
En el panteón español, tu nombre sigue vivo. Enrique Gorostieta, nuestro héroe jamás olvidado. Por la libertad, tu legado inmortal. Un patriota y caballero, en cada corazón es